Anthem of the heart and anthem of the mind. A funeral dirge for eyes gone blind. That's right. Today it's Rush time. So let's check out my ranking from Legendary, which is the best tier, to A tier, which is great, to B tier, which is good, to C tier, which is mediocre or aka forgettable, and finally D tier, which, considering what the band is capable of, I consider as shite. I don't have all the Rush albums, so let's see if I can remember every one of them, but we'll go through the majority of Rush production here, their discography. So, this is their first album called Rush, 1974. Still a bit of a different lineup, different drummer here, but Alex is here already and Geddy Lee is here. I just got his new biography book called My Effing Life. I haven't read it yet, so I'm looking forward to that one. Interested. Yeah, 74, lots of great bands started producing albums that year. I don't know, it's not a terrible album, but it kind of sounds like a Led Zeppelin wannabe. So for me, I would say this is somewhere between a mediocre and good tier, considering especially what's coming up. Whenever I listen to this one, and it's pretty rarely that I put it on, but if I put it on, I kind of enjoy it. I'm gonna say it's B tier. It's a good album. I can understand that some people like it, but it's quite different from what's to come pretty soon. Can you find any live material from this tour? Yeah, if you get this box set, for instance, you can find these radio shows, Agora Ballroom, Cleveland, in August 26th, 1974. And I think there might be some songs that they never actually released on an album. Yeah, there's Garden Road, Fancy Dancer, Bad Boy. I think Bad Boy is a cover track though, but still. So some quite interesting things happening here. And there might be even some early songs from their second album, Fly By Night, that they were already playing. Here's another one from that same box set. This is also Agora Ballroom, Cleveland, 7th of April, 1975. If memory serves me correct, this would be just slightly before their second album was released, but I'm not like 100% sure about that. Here's the second album, Fly By Night. I think this is a really cool album. Really amazing. There you can see Mr. Peart also there. So there's like the classic lineup. And it sounds really energetic and great. The songs are still kind of short, but I actually enjoy that very much. There's already some epic songs here, like Bytor and the Snow Dog, which is one of my favorite tracks. The only downside of this album, Making Memories maybe isn't that great. Rivendell just goes on forever. I'm not a huge fan of In the End. It kind of sounds like Led Zeppelin to me a bit. I'm not a huge Zeppelin fan. I would say this is their first great album, so I will place this in A tier. It's not perfect, but it's pretty darn good. And, considering the Rush criteria, that's pretty amazing. Can you find live stuff? Yeah, this one doesn't sound too amazing though. I think, or maybe it was, have I got it the other way around? Because this is from December 1974, yeah. So I think this is the other one actually from, well, is the date wrong? I'm not sure. But this might be the other one from that first album tour. And maybe this one is actually from Fly By Night tour after all. Or maybe it's just slightly before that one. I think that Anthems by Night, this doesn't sound that great, to be honest. But these other two are okay if you're accepting radio broadcasts and stuff like that. So they're pretty good quality considering the time and era, you know, perfectly fine. Here's a weird one, Caress of Steel. I don't really know what to say about this one. It's one that I pretty rarely listen to. Um, I mean, it starts off as a Rush classic with Bastille Day. Many people complain about I Think I'm Going Bold, but I think it's a nice rocking track with kind of funny lyrics. It's perfectly fine. Lakeside Park, it's a slow song, but I still like it. Uh, what kind of freaks me out is the longer epic tracks. I really kind of like them, but at the same time, they're kind of weirding me out a lot. I don't think I can call this a good album, to be honest. I'm gonna put it in the mediocre pile. I wouldn't call it shit exactly, but it's just very weird. So if you're in the mood for something really weird and kind of heavy Rush, then you might actually enjoy this. I like my metal, but this one has always kind of freaked me out. It doesn't sound like the Rush I know. I'm gonna place it in C tier, in the mediocre, kind of weird. It's a strange album. Um, they didn't release any live stuff from that I know of, but there are some uh, concert clips floating around the interwebs. So if you're interested in that time period, you can find some live material. This is their big breakthrough album from 1976, 2112, and the kimonos and all that silly garderobe is happening. Um, Great album, yeah, absolutely. I place this in super tier. I'm not gonna say it's perfect, but the A side is so bloody good that you don't care about the B side, really. And even there, you can find Passage to Bangkok and Something for Nothing, and the other tracks are decent as well. So yeah, that's definitely one of the classics. Can you find some live stuff? Well, no shit, Sherlock. There's a whole official live album that was released on this tour called All the World's a Stage, and it is a very good document on the early run, recorded in Canada. I can't remember the city. Was it in Toronto? Yeah, in their home city. I think they recorded this one. So that's definitely a cool one here. There's like an ad from their first 4 studio albums here. I think it's really good and solid. It's not quite my favorite, but it feels pretty genuine, and I like it for that. There's a slight roughness in the sound, and I really like that. Okay, then we get to the second 4 era albums, I guess. 1977, Farewell to Kings. This is my absolute favorite album, so I guess you already know which tier this is going. It's perfect. It's the second really proggy album of this 3 programs. I don't count Caress of Steel there. Maybe I should. They do have some longer epics there, but if I'm talking about the really good long epics, we have Xanadu here, we have Cygnus X1 here. Only thing that I don't quite like as much on this album is Closer to the Heart. I've just heard it too many times. It doesn't really do it for me. But with that one short song excluded, it's like less than 3 minutes. I'm obviously gonna say that's in the perfect tier, legendary tier. If you get this anniversary edition, you're gonna find a really cool live show here, spread on 2 different discs. So that is pretty amazing. So you might as well go and get this version of Farewell to Kings straight away, because there you get arguably the greatest official live show that they have ever released. And the track list is just perfect. The only tour that has a better track list, in my opinion, is the second one. Or actually, like the following tour. Hemispheres, 1978. We're still talking about talking about the prog years, this is the one where they kind of almost went kind of burnt out because of it. Only 4 tracks on this album, and they are all really good. So if I'm in the right mood set, this is my favorite album. But there's something about Xanadu that is so magical. I usually go with Farewell to Kings as my favorite album. This one isn't quite as organic or rough. It's a bit slick. So I'm gonna still put it in a legendary tier, but it isn't quite my favorite. I think I prefer Farewell to Kings and 2112 a bit better than that one, but that's still in my top 3, absolutely. Here we have the perfect set list. This is unfortunately only a bootleg from Tucson, Arizona, from November 20th, 1978. But this is magical, this track list here. You got Anthem, Passage to Bangkok, Bytor, Xanadu, Something for Nothing, The Trees, Cygnus X1, all of Hemispheres. You got Closer to the Heart, Circumstances, Farewell to Kings, La Villa Strangiato, 2112, Working Man, Bastille Day, In the Mood, and Drum Solo, this kind of old stuff medley there at the end. This is perfect track set list. There isn't one single song that I would have changed. They play, and they still manage just about, because they play so long shows, they managed just about playing all of their great songs that night that they had ever recorded and released. So that's magical. If only this was an official release, it would absolutely be my favorite. Out of the official stuff, I gotta go with Farewell to Kings, and this is a hell of a show also. And it's maybe a bit rougher sounding, and I think that might be kind of a good thing also. So we got like this official best and then like a bootleg best show ever, which is kind of nice because Rush just seems to be so relentless. Here we start the 1980s, and you kind of expect them to not release that good albums anymore, but they kind of revamp their style. It's a bit more synthesized once again. The synthesizers have been creeping in since 2112. First it was like just like a sound effect thing, and then there was a little bit more and more. With Xanadu, it's in the chorus and so on. It's creeping into the sound, and here we are really hearing the influence that that synthesizer has. There was a time when this was actually my favorite album, but it is a bit soft. It isn't quite as hard rocking as some of the earlier ones. The songwriting here is still amazing. There are a couple of these a bit longer tracks like Jacob's Ladder and Natural Science. Spirit of Radio is great, Free Will is great. There really aren't any bad songs here, but maybe Entre Nous and Different Strings are a bit on the soft side. If I have to be really cruel, I'm gonna place this in A tier, not legendary tier. It should be, it kind of could be in legendary tier, you know. It's so good, but I'm gonna be like a really stickler here and say you can only have 3 legendary albums. So I'm gonna put that at the top of A tier instead of legendary. Here is a live album from that tour, St. Louis 1980, and it sounds like an official release. It isn't, it's unofficial, but it sounds so bloody great. It's amazing. They actually took some tracks from this recording and put them on their next live album, official live album. It's that good. So definitely, if you don't like any other Rush bootlegs, I would really urge you to give this a listen. Tucson, Arizona, 1978, because of the track list. But the sound isn't perfect. But here, the sound is perfect. There is no reason for a Rush fan not to listen to the St. Louis 1980 bootleg. Please check it out. It's amazing. It's as good as any official live offerings of that era. Here's another version of that St. Louis one. Kiel Auditorium, 13th of February 1980. And then they released, I guess, their biggest selling album ever, Moving Pictures. Oh man, this is so heart-wrenching to think that I'm gonna have to place this in A tier instead of Legendary. I would really like to place this in Legendary. It is a bit harder rocking than Permanent Waves. For some reason, when I first heard it, I didn't like it quite as much as their best stuff, but it has grown on me through the years. I guess I'm not a huge fan of Tom Sawyer for some reason, but I've learned to enjoy it better. Red Barchetta is a killer song, Limelight is amazing. Vital Signs is very weird, but I really like it. There aren't any bad songs here, so this should be Legendary as well, but I'm gonna be a real meanie and say this isn't quite in my top 3, so I'm gonna place it in A tier. To be honest, I think this is even slightly better than Permanent Waves, but it's a very even battle. Did they release any live stuff? Sure as eggs is eggs. Here we go with the Exit Stage Left, their second official live album, before they had released any of those half official things from Farewell to King's Tour and all that. This was the place to go for Xanadu and Trees and all these amazing songs. I think Side 2 is the one where they took songs from St. Louis in 1980. I think Jacob's Ladder, for instance, they didn't play actually on this tour. But there you go. This is a really good live album, but it's really slick, and there are fade-ins and fade-outs between the tracks, which really bothers me. So if I'm gonna be really brutal, I'm gonna say this is this far their worst live offering, which really feels horrible because there's so many iconic versions played here. Trees and Xanadu, for instance, are magical. And there's still some old stuff like Beneath, Between and Behind, and it's a really good one, but it doesn't quite cut it for me, considering the great live albums they released before. It's really good still though. So if you don't mind that it's like clips from different shows and that it's pretty heavily synthesized and very produced, and it doesn't sound that live, then I'm gonna say go for it because the songs are magical. But as an experience, I would prefer it to be a little bit rougher. So you might want to get this instead. Moving Pictures for the anniversary edition. What we have here, looky looky. 2 CDs dedicated to the live show. Finally they released it. Here it is, and I haven't listened to this enough, but as far as I can remember, this was a little bit more organic sounding. I really like the fact that there's a whole live show here, so you can actually get a good idea what they actually played on this tour. So yeah, I would probably go with this one. You don't need to buy a separate Moving Pictures because you get it here also. Honestly, if you're just gonna get one thing from Rush, maybe you should go for this 40th anniversary edition of Moving Pictures, because this is a great studio album, and then you got a whole live show on 2 CDs here, and it's magical. Now, what happens next is they go really heavy on the synthesizer, starting with 1982 Signals. The songwriting is still absolutely there. They're kind of tired of making those long epics, but there are still some pretty long 6 minutes or so songs, and the songwriting is absolutely still there. But if you're not into the synthesizer stuff quite as much, I'm kind of having a bit of a problem with this one. I would probably place it in good tier. Uh, the songs are still really good, and especially the bass line on Digital Man might be the best I've ever heard. So there's always something interesting to listen to, even with these Rush albums that I'm not such a huge fan of. And in the right mindset, I think it's a very cool album because of the songwriting. But all in all, no, B tier, B tier, because they have done so much better stuff. Here's Grace Under Pressure. It's even more synthesized, almost kind of claustrophobic, and really, really kind of like, I don't know what's the word, depressed, and kind of there's so much anguish here, and it's a really dark album. It's an interesting kind of contradiction with the soft and air and lighty synthesizer sounds. The songwriting is brilliant. I even like tracks like Red Lenses, uh, and well, Enemy Within is great. Even Git Clubs, which is almost like an afterthought or kind of just thrown in there. Even that one worked for me. After Image is great. Mm, yeah, it's really tough. I think music wise, I'm gonna have to say this is a bit more. This is a bit better than Signals. I'm gonna say it's at the top of B tier so far. You can find a live album from this tour. I don't actually have it, but there's another version of this DVD where I think you got like 3 sets thrown together, where you can find Exit Stage Left, Show of Hands, and then this live Grace Under Pressure thing where you also get this CD as a bonus. So you can find some live stuff officially, even from that tour. Then we get to 1985, and this is Power Windows. Um, it's they turn to this a bit poppier side with this one, but the songwriting is still kind of enjoyable. The A side is I kind of like the Big Money, even though it's poppy as they come, as poppy as they come, and Grand Designs. But then Manhattan Project in Marathon is the kind of very airy, I don't know, kind of 80s synthesizer rock that I'm not that much a fan of. But then on the B side, you get Territories, Middletown Dreams, which is catchy as heck, and Emotion Detector, and it's surprisingly good album. I would kind of expect this to be really mediocre or forgettable. But I'm gonna say this is pretty good. I think I'd rather listen to this than even their first one, so I'm gonna put this somewhere in B tier under Signals and Grace Under Pressure, I would say. But it's still good enough because of the songwriting. Now, what they did next, they released Hold Your Fire, which is shit. I think it's fair to say it's a horrible album. I have no interest in getting that album at the moment, at least. Who knows? Maybe I'm gonna eventually collect all Rush albums. Then they released Show of Hands, which is very synthesized. I don't know. It's not to my personal liking. Uh, then there's the stuff of of 90s. I think Presto came in 1989. Um, Not a great album. I would probably say it's. There are a couple of pretty cool songs though. I think Chain Lightning and especially The Pass are very cool songs. So maybe I would say it's in C tier, mediocre, forgettable, all in all, by Rush standards. And then there's I think Roll the Bones, which is a bit better, less synthesized. They start getting their act together. Probably still in the mediocre tier, considering Rush and what they're capable of. Counterparts starts off kind of promisingly, but it maybe isn't quite that good after all. I would say probably in the mediocre tier as well. Um, and then they released Test for Echo, and I think it's fair to say that's in the shit tier. That's usually at the bottom of the pile for any Rush fan. And then the tragedy struck, and the drummer lost his family. So there was a long pause there that they didn't release any albums, so it might have been the last Rush album. They did release this live album, which I actually have, called Different Stages. I think it's probably the first official Rush thing I got. And as a live album, I think it's pretty great. There are some really good things there. They play 2112 in its completion. There's actually an early version of this 1977 tour, Farewell to Kings tour, from Hammersmith Odeon, 1978, February 20th, where it's like basically the same show, but they couldn't fit it all in one disc, so they cut out a few songs, but it's still really amazing that live thing there. It's just that afterwards they released this, so now this is even better than that was back in the day. But yeah, there are still some really cool tracks there. Analog Kid, then there's Driven, then there's Stick It Out Live. Really, the track list is good. Dreamline, lots of these newer songs. Even from this kind of mediocre albums, you get one or two really great songs. So it's not a bad live album at all, and you get all the classic old live stuff as well with it. So I would say, yeah, it's a very cool live album, even though arguably they're not at their best on that tour. Then there was this long break, and when they returned with Vapor Trails, which you have two versions of. There's the original version with production that sounds really rough and kind of crappy, and then there's the remixed one which sounds a little bit more palatable. But they had this idea of not playing any guitar solos and stuff like that. So once again, that's kind of off-putting for some fans. Rush in Rio, you can also find this in CD form. I don't have the CD, but it's a very good live album as well. Of course, the band has aged, so not all of these versions are the greatest, and some of the newer material is a bit not that interesting in my opinion. But still, I think this is a really um, cool live show. And then I think next they released Snakes and Ladders. No, wait a minute. I think they released Feedback EP, and it was on that tour that I went to see them. And I actually have this in Blu-ray, but also in DVD. On the DVD version, you actually get a CD version, double CD version of the show. So that I guess counts as a live offering as well. And all of these new albums are actually pretty well documented also live. So you can find really nice cross section of these new songs played live on their tour, on these new tours that they've done in the 2000s. So it's really well documented. What else? Then their final album, Clockwork Angels, and it's really the first official complete theme album I guess they've ever made. And it's great that they managed to squeeze this one out in 2012, just a couple of years before the drummer passed away. So it is actually a really strong album. I think Snakes and Arrows wasn't half bad either. There are some really cool tracks there. Spindrift, I think, was one of them, and the opening track, I can't remember its name right now, but I think that was a pretty cool and surprisingly energetic rocking song. Here we have stuff like Caravan and BU2B, Brought Out to Believe, I think is the actual name of the track. They released those two tracks a single years before releasing this album. I think in 2009 or 2010, something like that. Um, and then finally, this album was released. The title track is amazing. Anarchist, I think, is a fine song. Um, Headlong Flight is one of my favorites here. But then there are these kind of more melodic, softer tracks like The Wreckers and The Garden, which are also full of feeling. Even Wish Them Well, I kind of dig that song. And I think this is a really good album and surprisingly good considering their age. Is it legendary tier though? Not quite. Is it A tier though? It's so tough to say. It might be just about A tier. I might enjoy this one a bit better than those synthesized albums. So I think I'm gonna place it here underneath Fly By Nights. And they also released a DVD from that tour, so that's pretty much all the Rush stuff that I know is kind of like organized, put into its place. Um, I think probably I would place Counterparts and that stuff somewhere in B or C tier. Test for Echo in shit or D tier. And then Vapor Trails, it's fine, but it's kind of up, I think, C tier. And Snakes and Arrows, probably high C tier, at the low end of B tier, somewhere like there. And Feedback EP, I think, is really energetic and I kind of enjoy it, but it's not really like their songs. It's just like their versions of old classic rock songs. At the bottom of B tier, I would say. Okay, so a quick check once more. My favorite Rush album, Farewell to Kings. Second favorite, 2112. And my number 3, Hemispheres. So this is the proggy triple, and it's really cool. Also, in the case of pretty much any other band, this would be legendary tier as well. Moving Pictures, my number 4. Permanent Waves also should be legendary tier, but it's just Rush is so ridiculous band. Top 5 for me on these Rush albums. My 6th favorite, Fly By Night. My number 7, their last album, Clockwork Angels. Number 8, Grace Under Pressure, really synthesizery and hard to listen to sonic-wise, but the songwriting is really cool. Number 9, Signals. A bit more tolerable actually coming from Moving Pictures. This is like a one in the middle bit before Grace Under Pressure. And in my top 10, Power Windows also, which is kind of a surprise. It's very synthesizery. And then we have the first Rush album, and then I guess we would get to Feedback and Snakes and Arrows and all that stuff. And Caress of Steel, kind of an odd one out. Really, really weird for me. But there you go. Have a good one.